Hi, I'm Anthony Originello, CEO of the Chartered Professionals in Human Resources for BC and Yukon. We represent more than 8,000 members, and as the organization dedicated to advancing the HR profession through education, advocacy, awareness, professional development, as well as our recognized and impactful CPHR designation, we are proud to be a sponsor of this show. We have been the voice of the HR profession since 1942. Learn more about us at cphrbc.ca.
On this edition of Careers That Matter, I'm joined by Dr. Edward Slingerland, the author of Drunk, along with other books such as Trying Not to Try. He is a sinologist and a philosopher and an author. But there's even more to his life than just that. Edward, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
How do you describe what your current job is? Because you're a university professor, you're an author, you're a researcher.
I don't know how to describe my job, except that it's awesome. I basically, I teach, so I have currently a joint appointment between UBC and Dartmouth College in New Hampshire. And this is the solution to the two-body problem I have with my wife, who's a neuroscientist here. So I'm in a philosophy department at UBC. I'm in a religion department here in Dartmouth. I teach at both places. I just finished an academic monograph, but my next book is going to be a general audience trade book. And then I also run this big database of religious history, this big digital humanities project that takes up a fair amount of time to manage. So I do a lot of different things, and it's really hard to explain and my daily life really varies. If I'm working on a book, I'm often writing all day, but especially during grant writing periods, I'm busy with colleagues trying to get funding for the DRH. So yeah, I have a very strange life, and I work in so many different fields: cognitive science, religion, philosophy, sinology. I just wrote a book about alcohol. It's hard to explain to people what I'm adjunct in psychology at UBC, so I do a lot of cognitive science stuff. It's hard to even explain what field I'm in.
So you don't have a typical day then?
I don't have a typical day. No, which is good. I like it. I don't think I would thrive with a regular 9-to-5 job. So,
but then how do you bring structure or discipline to your days? Because you're the one who is setting the objective in all these different avenues of exploration or what your career is. How do you then go about saying, okay, well, this is how I'm going to structure this day because it's helping me to reach certain objectives that I have?
Yeah, that's the most challenging part. Typically, what I do if I'm working on a book, I try to be sitting at my desk writing by 7:30 in the morning. And my ideal work day when I'm writing is writing from like 7:30 to 11:30. And then I have a big lunch, take a nap. I'm a big proponent of napping. And then the afternoon is for email and editing and kind of non-creative stuff. But it's really challenging because if by mistake you open your email in the morning and you see all the stuff you got to deal with, you can get sucked into it. So it requires some discipline, both to sit down and also to not look at your email and not get sucked into the kind of the immediate attention stuff that you need to ignore if you're going to be able to focus on something constructive or creative.
So what does a day look like if teaching is on the agenda?
Then no writing. I can't write and teach in the same day. So yeah, teaching days are just teaching days. And ideally the way I structure my life is I have writing days, I have teaching days, and I typically have to allocate at least one day to this database project, to meetings with that or email, grant writing for that. So I find task switching is really hard. So it's the only way I can do things efficiently is to make sure I'm only doing one thing any given day. So the teaching day, I'll teach, and that's what I'll do, like office hours and grading and that kind of stuff.
So when you're teaching, you're going to be compensated by the institution that you're teaching for. When you're writing, hopefully you're going to get a return on investment on your efforts in putting together a book, if that's what you're working on. But you also talked
Yeah.
about having to write grants. So in some ways, a part of your job is also making sure that you have appropriate financial resources.
Not really. I mean, the amazing thing about being a tenured professor is you get paid to write. So I'm getting my salary whether I'm teaching or not. I mean, I
Mm.
have to do a certain amount of teaching for the university, and my grant buys me out of a bit some of my teaching. The grant money, and the grant money is not for me. It doesn't really pay my salary or anything like that. It's for hiring all our personnel who are, our tech person, our postdocs, people managing new entries, and for data gathering pushes. So the money I'm raising for the project is not. I don't need it to pay for my groceries or anything like that. I need it to advance the research goals of this particular project. But I mean, the being a professor is amazing. I get paid to teach, but I get paid to write and just to
Yeah.
think about things. It's a really great job.
Well, I'm just trying to understand all the components of your work because you now talk about the team on the research project. You're in a management role there to a certain
Yeah,
extent, aren't you?
yeah,
So, and also you do interviews. So you've got outward-facing elements to what you're doing.
yeah.
It's an interesting and complex but very dynamic way to go through life, and I can see why you love it so much.
Yeah, no, I can't. If this job didn't exist, I'm not sure what I would do. I don't think I would do very well in a regular office job. And yeah, I don't know. I have no idea what I would do. It's incredible, the flexibility and the the fact that I'm always doing something that I'm interested in for the most part is pretty amazing.
So, where'd you go to high school?
Went to high school in New Jersey, in South Jersey. I'm American originally, so
Yeah.
I grew up in New Jersey. Did my first 2 years of college in New Jersey, and then I've always kind of hated the East Coast, even though I was born there. So finally moved to California the day I turned 20, and I dropped out of college on the East Coast and rode my motorcycle to San Francisco, and I've been out west since then except for this recent hiccup where I fell in love with someone who lives in New Hampshire. So I'm back on the
Yeah.
East Coast part time. But yeah, West Coast is really where I feel at home, where I did most of my schooling.
And what did you study when you first entered? Did you say, "Oh yeah, I know what I want to do. I want to be a sinologist and a philosopher and write books and teach"? What was the beginning of your academic
Yeah,
education leading to your academic career?
I was a molecular biology major. I thought I was going to be a molecular biologist. And I told this to my daughter. My daughter just started at McGill, and she's sure she wants to be a psych major, and she thinks she knows what she's going to do, but you don't know when you're that young. And so I discovered I was really bad at. I got a B in organic chemistry. I'd never gotten a B in my life, and I really worked hard in that class. I was like, "What is going on here?" And I realized I just wasn't good at organic chemistry. I'm not good at what in particular mental rotation. I can't like figure out if you turn a molecule, if it'll fit into this other molecule or not. Um, so then I switched to marine ecology. So I did marine ecology for a year and did like a research project in the field. And doing science in the field made me realize that I didn't want to be a scientist in that regard because I was like scuba diving. It's great. But we were scuba diving for 6 hours a day, counting conch on the bottom of this bay, and then going back to a lab and doing math. I was like, no, I don't like this either. And around then, I was reading, I was really into Jack Kerouac for a while. And there's a character in Dharma Bums named Jaffe, who was modeled on Gary Snyder, the poet Gary Snyder. And he was a graduate student at UC Berkeley in Japanese and Chinese classical poetry. And he spent his time kind of hanging out in the mountains, reading Zen poetry and drinking wine. And I was like, that actually sounds like what I want to do. So that's when I dropped out and moved west and switched and became a Chinese major. Um, and yeah, but then, I was trained as a sinologist and religious studies person, humanities person. But right after my dissertation, I started to realize that cognitive science and evolutionary theory solved a lot of problems that I had intellectually, things I was interested in. The tools I could get from these scientific fields were more useful. And so I actually basically took like 6 years, kind of 6 years off. It's not really, I was teaching, but I retrained myself. This is the beauty of tenure. I knew I was going to get tenure because I put out these couple books and I was pretty confident I'd get tenure. And so I retrained myself in evolutionary science and cognitive science and neuroscience, and moved into a completely different set of fields and started talking to a completely different set of people. So I've really zigzagged all over the place in my career, and I think it's important for younger people to realize that this is okay. Like you don't have to end up doing what you were trained in, and you don't necessarily know yet, and you have to follow what excites you and what you think is really interesting, and not just do what you were trained to do.
Well, you answered my next question already. What's your advice to young people? Last question for you, though, is along life's journey in your career, what have you discovered about an element within yourself that you go, oh yeah, this was an important part of who I am that allowed me to follow this path and to have success? Because you don't always know it when you start on the journey, but sometimes it reveals itself.
Yeah, I think I'm an introvert. I'm capable of short bursts of extroversion like this, doing
Yeah.
interviews or waiting tables when I was in college. But I like to sit alone and read and think. So I just my constitution really makes me well adapted to this career that I've ended up in. And I know people who struggle with the challenges of, publish or perish, and it's really stressful for them to write because they don't like being alone, and they prefer to like be out interacting with people. So I'm lucky that I found a career that fits my personality type, and the kind of rhythms of my day that I prefer. So that's the other thing that I think people have to think about is, what's your preferred day look like? And is it getting out immediately and starting interacting with people and having meetings all day and doing lunch with people? Some people, that's what they want to do. Whereas I would last like a day or two doing that. I'd shoot myself. It would be horrible. So,
Right.
well,
Thank you for giving us an insight into what your current jobs, because it's a collective, look like,
yeah,
and your path to getting there. We want younger people to be able to consume this series and say, okay, there is no straight line necessarily. Yeah. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.